I've known Rich for 2 decades now.
Long time.
But I'm glad he's sitting in this chair because I've gotten to know he's one of the most acute observers of business around the globe, and really glad to have the opportunity to spend a little time talking to you about our topic, our official topic.
Yes.
You can talk about whatever you want to, Rich, but our official topic is the AI value gap. And I'm glad that's our topic because at the Leadership Institute, we've had dozens of CEO conversations over the last year where there's almost uniform agreement among the CEOs that this isn't a bubble, that there's incredible technology here that can transform most of the businesses represented in this room. But there's also about 95% frustration at the difficulty in getting their own organizations to adopt it. So why is that?
I want to say 3 things in response to that. 1, it's always slower than you think it's going to be at the beginning. I was the CEO of BCG when the digital wave started in late 2012. And if you had had a meeting like this in late 2015, 3 years in, you'd have heard a lot of this say, well, is it really going to take off and how impactful is it going to be? And we hear all this talk, but what's happening? So I do think we have to have a little bit of understanding that we're all learning something new and it takes some time. But beyond that, I would say 2 other things. I think that there's a real challenge right now between companies not realizing the distinction between being competitive and building competitive advantage with AI. And when I say being competitive, there are tools coming at every CEO night and day from every tech firm. And a lot of them are good tools, and a lot of them will genuinely help in productivity in some form. But the truth is, the day after there's a conversation with you, there's a conversation with
your competitor.
With your competitor down the street. The likelihood of really building advantage with that is harder. That if you're going to build competitive advantage with AI, it means you're either fundamentally reshaping workflows using distinctive assets that you have, your data, your relationships, your ability, or you're inventing new business models. And I think companies are disproportionately often over-investing in the deploying tools part, where it's often harder to see the value and harder to see the distinctive value than making the hard choices about where they can really embed capabilities that will build.
Because this one is more difficult.
It's much more difficult, but it's the critical element of being able to drive business value. And the second thing I would say is going back 10 years, so this is not a fad comment, this is when we first started our AI work in 2015, the guy who ran it, Sylvain Duranton, talked about 10-20-70, because we were observing when you do an AI transformation, from a work point of view, the effort point of view, 10% of the work is in the algorithms that you build, 20% of the work is in the digital and data platforms, and 70% is in people, process, reskill, upskill, breaking down silos, all the heavy lifting inside an organization so people know what to use, know how to use it, and want to use it, and can do it in a way that actually adds value.
That was 10 years ago?
He said that 10 years ago when predictive AI, the early neural net sort of stuff, and advanced analytics was only touching 5% of the workforce. Now you have AI touching 50% of the workforce. It's even more important, and I think many companies so see it as a tech challenge, the right chief digital officer, the right chief information officer, and they underestimate the role of business leadership and taking on the 70 part, not just the 10 and
Rich,
the 20.
it's such an important insight. I mean, I've been in so many of these conversations, roundtable conversations with CEOs talking about the tech challenge, and you always realize about 15 or 20 minutes in, suddenly they're not talking about technology anymore. They're talking about the people problem. But tell us, okay, great, 70% of our time and attention needs to be focused on the people problem. But how do you do that, particularly when you're talking about a technology that might eliminate their jobs?
I'm going to take 2 companies, opposite kinds of businesses. L'Oreal, front-end, consumer-facing, Foxconn, one of the truly best manufacturers in the world. Both have embraced AI. Both, if you listen to them on stage, their CEOs, whether it's at CES or other major events, they've talked about how AI is important to them. In L'Oreal's case, they're using it for the engagement part with their customers, with Beauty Genius and a whole different platform to use AI to help people choose the right products for them, and in their upstream innovation to be able to build sophisticated models of skin and hair and really accelerate the innovation process. They took an HR leader, not a tech leader, and they made her global AI coordinator.
Wow.
And her focus is not just on how the tech gets deployed, but how to upskill a workforce that wants to use AI, sees why it benefits them and the company, and has the skills and capabilities to embrace it, and then reskilling the organization, both through upskilling and bringing in talent. The other end of the spectrum, Foxconn. They had struggled to build expert systems in Foxconn for decades. And they took on this AI challenge, and they realized the challenge was not just the tech. Obviously, a generative AI world makes that much easier to do. But it was the ability to get their frontline tech, these unbelievably trained experts who've been on lines for 15 years and have world-class expertise, to know how to be able to put data in. They empowered them with wearables and portables, and they trained them so that they could put in all this information. And they've been able to build expert systems that have literally saved hundreds of millions of capital, or billions now of capital, when they're building new facilities, because they can ramp them up so much faster. They can drive to higher productivity.
And how did they deal with the people resistance?
It was all the frontline engagement. I mean, in both of those, we had a role, and in both of those, the issue is not just about understanding the tech and being able to build tech, which is important. I'm not minimizing it. It is, how do you get organizations engaged in understanding how to use it and thinking about entire workflows, not just individual tools.
So what's every person in this room is probably dealing with some version of this challenge. What's your advice to them?
Well, some of it we've talked about, which is embracing the holistic challenge of this 10 2070. But I want to make one other point that is just really important, which is you cannot do everything. And one of the things we've seen in the survey we did this year, our Build for the Future survey, when you look at the most advanced AI companies, they don't take on more things, they take on fewer things. There's this counterintuitive thinking that the best thing to do is give everybody AI, get everybody to want to use AI. But I'm arguing that to really learn how to fundamentally change a business with AI, you have to first figure out what's truly strategic to the business, what's worth making the time and effort to engage on. You have to have business leadership as well as tech leadership. You need both. And then you really need to pick few things and deliver them and build the capabilities and confidence. And then when you build that, then you can take it to broader and broader parts of the business.
So you've talked about, in the last 10 minutes, a top-down and a bottoms-up strategy at the same time. On the one hand, you have to engage the frontline employees.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, you have to be very strategic and make hard choices at the top about where you're going to place your bet.
Because the truth is, if you want to engage the organization, if you want to take on all of these challenges, no company can do that across the entire business at once. Certainly not in a new area. Maybe if you're 5 or 10 years in, you can start to do that. But if you're early on in the journey, as most companies are, you can't do everything at once. So you have to figure out what's really going to be critical for us to get real wins, fundamentally change our customer relationships, fundamentally drive innovation, fundamentally drive operating efficiency or capital deployment, and then take the effort to really do it right in those spaces, which is business and tech and working at the front lines, not just in great tech.